I shouldn't have teased him. That's the part that still makes me blush when I think about it. I'm used to being the one in control, the one who makes men nervous, the one who decides when a conversation starts and when it ends. But that day on the beach, I wasn't prepared for him. I was supposed to be on vacation. 7 days. That's what my assistant, Marcus, forced on me after I worked 18 months straight without a break. 7 days away from Reed Industries, the company I built from a tiny rented office into something worth $500 million. Crescent Bay wasn't my kind of place. No five-star spas, no Michelin-starred restaurants, just salt air, loud seagulls, and families who looked annoyingly happy. I told myself I was there to rest. Instead, I was answering emails within 10 minutes of sitting down. That's when I saw them. About 20 yards away, a man sat on a faded blue towel, completely focused on a little boy building the most chaotic sandcastle I'd ever seen. The kid, Leo, I'd later learn, was maybe 7. Dark curls, serious eyes. The kind of focus I usually saw in junior executives trying to impress me. "Wet the sand more, buddy," the man said gently. His voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. The boy ran toward the ocean, spilling half his bucket on the way back. The man didn't correct him, didn't optimize the process, just watched. Watched like it was the only thing in the world that mattered. And that's what caught me, not his looks, though he had that rugged steadiness about him. Strong jaw, weathered hands, the kind of man who built things instead of presenting slides about them. It was his attention, complete, unrushed, unshaken. I realized I'd been staring when he looked up and our eyes met. So I did what I always do when I feel exposed. I went on the offensive. I walked over, sat down a careful distance away, and after a few minutes of light conversation, I tilted my sunglasses down just slightly and said, "So, enjoying the view?" I meant it playfully, strategically, maybe even flirtatiously. He didn't miss a beat. He looked at the ocean, then at his son, then back at me. "Every part of it," he said. No smirk, no double meaning, just truth. And for the first time in years, I didn't know how to respond. I laughed like I understood him. Like his answer didn't just knock something loose inside my chest. But it did, because when he said every part of it, he wasn't flirting. He wasn't performing. He wasn't even really talking to me. He meant his son. He meant the crooked sandcastle. He meant the wind and the salt air in the moment. And I suddenly felt irrelevant. I'm not used to that feeling. In boardrooms, I am the center. My presence shifts energy. Men lean forward when I speak. They calculate their words carefully. But Daniel, he introduced himself a minute later, didn't shift at all. He stayed steady, grounded. "Leo," he called gently when the boy came running back with another half-empty bucket. "Slow down, buddy. Tide's not going anywhere." The kid rolled his eyes. "You don't know that." Daniel grinned. "Fair point." I watched their rhythm, the quiet humor, the way Leo checked every few minutes to make sure his father was still watching. And Daniel always was. "Are you here alone?" Leo asked me suddenly, blunt in that way only children can be. "Yes," I said. "That's sad," he replied without hesitation. "Vacations are better with people." I should have brushed it off. Instead, it stung. Daniel shot him a look. "Leo." "What? I'm just saying." "It's okay," I said quickly, even though it wasn't. Daniel studied me for a second, not in a judgmental way, just observant. "You work a lot," he said, not as a question. "Yes. Must be important." "It is." He nodded once. "Leo's important." It wasn't competitive. It wasn't defensive. It was simple fact, and for reasons I didn't understand, that unsettled me more than if he'd tried to impress me. "So what do you do?" I asked, instinctively searching for leverage. "Project manager. Construction company. Manual labor, timelines, real things, not theoretical power." "And you?" he asked. "I run a consulting firm." "Sounds intense." "It is." He smiled lightly. "Do you like it?" The question caught me off guard. No one asked that. They ask about revenue, growth, expansion, not whether I like my own life. I hesitated. Most of the time. He nodded like that was enough. Leo tugged at his sleeve. "Dad, help me with the moat." Daniel stood immediately. No hesitation, no checking of phone. Just up, present. As I watched him kneel in the sand beside his son, I felt something unfamiliar twist inside me. It wasn't attraction, not exactly. It was curiosity. And for the first time in a long time, I wanted to understand a man instead of outmaneuvering him. I went back the next morning, and I told myself it was because the beach was quiet, not because I wanted to see if he'd be there. I arrived at 9:30. They weren't there, which annoyed me more than it should have. I laid out my towel, opened my laptop, pretended to read a market report while my eyes kept drifting toward the parking lot. Pathetic Sophia. At 10:12, a blue Ford truck pulled in. Leo jumped out first. My stomach flipped. Daniel followed, slower, carrying a cooler and the same faded towel. He spotted me immediately. He smiled, not surprised, just pleased. You came back, Leo announced as if I'd made a legally binding agreement. I did. For the village? He asked urgently. The village? We're expanding, he explained. Yesterday was just phase 1. Daniel chuckled. He's been planning it since dinner. Vision matters, Leo said seriously. I laughed before I could stop myself. Daniel set the cooler down near my towel this time. Not too close, not distant either. Intentional. You don't have to join the chaos, he said. It gets competitive. I can handle competitive. He raised an eyebrow slightly. I don't doubt that. That small shift in tone, that subtle challenge, it sparked something warm in my chest. Leo started digging immediately. Sophia, you're in charge of defensive walls. Dad keeps underbuilding them. I do not, Daniel protested. You do. I glanced at Daniel. Sounds like performance feedback. He groaned. I walked into that one. We worked in the sand for nearly an hour. I should have hated it. The inefficiency, the lack of structure, the way the walls leaned slightly off-center. But when Leo beamed at something we built together, even though it was objectively flawed, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Pride without profit. Joy without outcome. At one point, I looked up and caught Daniel watching me. Not my body, not my face. Me. There was something softer in his eyes now. Curiosity, maybe even admiration. And it made my pulse quicken. Careful, he said quietly when I leaned too far over the moat and nearly lost my balance. His hand steadied my elbow. It was brief, but it lingered. You okay? He asked. Yes. Too fast. Too breathless. He noticed. I could tell. And for the first time, I wasn't the one controlling the temperature of the moment. He was. Leo suddenly gasped. The tide's coming. Water crept toward our masterpiece. Daniel stood slowly. Nothing lasts forever, he said calmly. Leo looked worried, but we worked hard on it. Daniel crouched beside him. That's the best part. We get to build again tomorrow. I watched them, and something inside me whispered, what if you want to be part of tomorrow? I didn't plan to stay for ice cream. I definitely didn't plan to sit in a red vinyl booth at Tony's Pizza 2 hours later, with sand still on my ankles and a 7-year-old, explaining why corner slices were scientifically superior. But that's exactly where I ended up, Leo had insisted. You can't build phase 1 and skip the celebration, he said as if this was corporate protocol. Daniel looked at me. No pressure. There was always pressure in my world, but not here. Okay, I heard myself say. Tony's smelled like garlic and nostalgia. Nothing curated, nothing polished. Daniel greeted the owner like family. Leo slid into the booth beside me without hesitation, without asking, like I belonged there. That scared me more than anything. Are you rich? Leo asked suddenly, sipping his root beer. Daniel choked on his drink. Leo! What, she wears expensive sunglasses? I laughed softly. I work a lot. That's not what I asked. Daniel shot me an apologetic look. I waved it off. Yes, I said honestly. I've done well. Leo considered that seriously. Does that make you happy? The question hit harder than any boardroom interrogation. Daniel didn't look at me. He just waited. I thought it did, I said carefully. And now? Leo pressed. Daniel gently nudged him. Buddy. It's okay, I said again. Now I wasn't so sure. Pizza arrived. Leo lit up again, crisis forgotten. Daniel watched him the way he always did, like the world could fall apart and he'd still be steady. You don't date much, I said quietly when Leo ran to the jukebox. Daniel leaned back slightly. Not really. Why? He didn't hesitate. Because Leo comes first. There it was again. Not defensive, not apologetic, just truth. And that scares people, I asked. It weeds out the wrong ones. He met my eyes then. And this time, there was no innocence in it. You don't strike me as someone who likes coming second, he said softly. My breath caught. He saw me, not the CEO, not the polished version, the woman who had always been first, always chosen, always prioritized. And suddenly I realized, if I stepped into his world, I wouldn't be. Leo came back oblivious, singing along to some old rock song. Daniel's gaze didn't leave mine. So, he said quietly, are you enjoying the view? This time, he meant me, and I didn't know whether to run or lean closer. I should have deflected. That's what I always do when a man shifts the balance. But I didn't. Instead, I held his gaze and said, "It's different from what I'm used to." Leo was still dancing near the jukebox, completely unaware that the air between us had changed. Daniel didn't smile. He didn't flirt. He just studied me. "Different good?" he asked. "I don't know yet. Honesty feels dangerous when you're used to strategy." He nodded slowly. "Fair answer." I exhaled, not realizing I'd been holding my breath. "You really won't date someone unless they're okay being second?" I asked. "I don't rank people," he replied calmly. "But Leo is my responsibility. His needs aren't optional. If that feels like second place to someone, they're not for me." There was no arrogance in it. No apology either, and for some reason, that steadiness made my pulse race. "I've never been second," I admitted before I could stop myself. Daniel's eyebrow lifted slightly. "Never?" "In relationships and work. I don't build things halfway. I don't share control easily." "I noticed," he said lightly. I should have been offended. Instead, I felt seen. Leo ran back to the table. "Dad, it's our song!" Daniel slid out of the booth without hesitation. "Dance break." "You're kidding," I said. He held out his hand, not to me, to Leo. They spun in the narrow space between tables, laughing, completely unconcerned about who was watching. And that's when it hit me. I wasn't competing with a child. I was witnessing a man who knew exactly who he was. When the song ended, Leo collapsed into the booth, breathless. Daniel sat back down across from me. "You look like you're thinking too hard," he said quietly. "I am." "About what?" "About whether I could exist in a world where I wasn't the center. About whether I could love a man who would choose someone else over me without hesitation. About whether that scared me or attracted me. "I'm not built for this," I said softly. "For pizza?" he teased. "For unpredictability." Daniel's voice lowered. "Maybe you're more built for it than you think." The way he said it, not pushing, not convincing, just believing, made something inside me tremble. Leo yawned loudly. Daniel smiled at him, then looked back at me. "You coming to the beach tomorrow?" The invitation wasn't casual. It felt like a line being drawn. "Yes," I said. And this time, I wasn't talking about the ocean. I woke up earlier than usual the next morning. Not because of emails, not because of deadlines, because I was thinking about him, about the way he danced without caring who watched, about the way he said Leo comes first without fear of losing me. That kind of certainty does something to a woman who's spent her whole life being the priority. I told myself I was just curious. Curiosity is safe. Curiosity doesn't change your life. By 9:15, I was back on the beach. They were already there. Leo was knee-deep in water, shrieking as waves chased him. Daniel stood close enough to grab him if he slipped, hands relaxed, but ready. That quiet vigilance again. It pulled at me. "You're early," Daniel said as I approached. "So are you." Leo doesn't believe in sleeping past 8. "I don't believe in wasting daylight." Leo shouted from the water. I laughed. Daniel gestured to the towel beside him. "Closer than yesterday. Not touching, but close." We sat in easy silence for a few minutes, the kind that doesn't beg to be filled. "You look different today," he said. "How?" "Less armored." The word hit too accurately. "I don't wear armor," I replied automatically. He just looked at me and waited. That's the thing about Daniel. He doesn't argue. He lets silence expose you. "I don't know how to do this," I admitted quietly. "Whatever this is, neither do I." That's not comforting. He smiled slightly. "It's honest." Leo came running back, dripping and grinning. "Dad, the water's freezing." "Sophia, you should try." "I don't do freezing," I said. Daniel stood up, extending a hand. "Come on, live dangerously." His fingers brushed mine. "Warm, steady." I hesitated. I don't rush into cold water. I calculate, I test, I control. But something in his eyes, a challenge, a promise. I took his hand. The wave hit my ankles and I gasped. Leo laughed like I'd performed magic. Daniel didn't let go, even after the shock faded, even after the water receded. And standing there, fingers tangled with a man who would always choose his son first. I felt something terrifyingly clear. I didn't want to compete. I wanted to belong. And that realization scared me more than losing control ever had, because belonging meant risk, and I had no idea if I was brave enough to take it. I didn't pull my hand away, even when the wave receded, even when Leo ran ahead again, shouting about a sea monster that looked suspiciously like a floating piece of kelp. Daniel noticed. Of course he did. "You okay?" he asked quietly. The question wasn't about the water. "Yes," I said. But my heart was racing, not from the cold, from the realization that I was standing in the ocean with a man who made me feel unbalanced in a way no boardroom ever had. We walked back to the towel slowly. Close, not touching now, but aware. Leo dropped onto his stomach and began digging again with dramatic urgency. We need higher ground. The tide is aggressive today? Daniel sat beside me. You ever get tired? He asked suddenly. Of what? Being strong all the time? The question cut through me. I didn't answer immediately. Because yes, God yes. But admitting that felt like weakness. I don't have a choice, I said finally. You always have a choice. It doesn't feel that way when 800 employees depend on you. Daniel nodded slowly. I get responsibility. Trust me. His eyes drifted to Leo. But responsibility isn't the same as isolation. Isolation. That word landed, because that's what my success had become. A very expensive kind of loneliness. Leo suddenly ran over, breathless. Sophia! Dad says the castle needs a queen. Daniel shot him a look. I said it needs leadership. Same thing, Leo insisted. He grabbed my hand before I could protest and dragged me toward the half-built structure. You're in charge now, he declared. Dad keeps letting the walls fall. Daniel raised his hands. I'm being overruled. I knelt in the sand again, and something inside me softened, not because I was leading, but because no one here expected perfection. Leo didn't care about my resume. Daniel didn't care about my net worth. They cared whether I showed up. That was it. At one point, Leo ran off again, chasing a gull. Daniel stayed beside me, close enough that our shoulders brushed. You scare easy? He asked softly. I don't scare. That wasn't the question. I swallowed. I don't like losing. Losing what? Control. Status. Being first. You. But I didn't say that. Instead, I whispered, things that matter. Daniel's voice lowered. Then maybe the question isn't whether you'll lose something. His fingers lightly traced the edge of the sand wall beside mine. Maybe it's whether you're willing to fight for it. The way he said it, not demanding, not dramatic, just steady, made something inside me shift again, because for the first time in years, I wasn't thinking about winning. I was thinking about staying, and I had no idea how dangerous that choice might be. That afternoon, Leo fell asleep on the towel, just like that, mid-sentence about sea monsters and structural integrity. Daniel draped a light sweatshirt over him, and adjusted it with the kind of tenderness that makes your chest ache. I watched his hands. Careful, protective, certain. You're staring again, he said softly without looking at me. I'm observing. He smiled slightly. Is that what you call it in boardrooms? In boardrooms, I call it due diligence. And what's your assessment so far? He turned his head then, met my eyes fully. No teasing this time, no deflection. I could have kept it light, could have laughed it off, but something about the quiet rhythm of waves and his son sleeping between us made honesty feel impossible. You make it look easy, I said. What? Being enough. He frowned gently. Enough for who? For him. For this. I gestured toward the ocean, the messy sand, the simplicity of it all. You don't seem like you're constantly trying to prove something. Daniel looked out at the horizon for a long moment. I already proved what I needed to, he said finally. And what was that? That I could survive losing someone. The words were calm, but they carried weight. Leo's mom? I asked carefully. He nodded. She left when he was 3. Decided motherhood wasn't what she wanted. No bitterness, just truth. For a while I kept trying to prove I wasn't the reason. My chest tightened. And now? Now I don't prove. I just show up. The simplicity of it nearly broke me. Show up. That's all. Not dominate. Not win. Not impress. Just stay. Leo shifted in his sleep and instinctively rolled closer to his father. Daniel's arm wrapped around him automatically. Reflex, unquestioned. Something warm and terrifying moved through me. You'd always choose him, I said quietly. Every time. No hesitation, no apology. And that doesn't scare you, I asked. It scares the wrong people away. His gaze shifted back to me. And the right ones? They stay. The air felt heavier, charged. I swallowed. You think I'd run? I think you're not used to not being the priority. The truth of it made my stomach twist. I don't know how to be second, I admitted. Daniel shook his head slowly. That's the wrong way to look at it. Then what's the right way? He leaned closer, close enough that I could feel his breath warm against my skin. You're not competing with my son, he said quietly. You're deciding if you want to build something with us. With us. Not him, not me, us. My pulse stumbled. Because suddenly this wasn't flirting. It wasn't tension. It was a door, and if I stepped through it, there would be no halfway. Do you? He asked softly, and for the first time since I built my empire, I didn't have a strategic answer, only a terrifying, fragile truth forming in my chest. I didn't answer him right away, because the truth was bigger than I expected. Do I want to build something with you? Not just a week of beach mornings. Not just flirtation layered under sunburn and salt air. Something real. Something that would cost me. Leo stirred again, murmuring in his sleep. Daniel instinctively brushed curls from his forehead. That simple gesture hit me harder than any romantic line ever could. You're asking a lot, I said quietly. I know. You're not offering something casual. No. His honesty made it impossible to hide. I don't do casual, he continued. Not with him involved. If you're here, you're here. If you're not, I need to know. There it was. The boundary. Clean. Unapologetic. In my world, people blurred lines to keep options open. Daniel drew them to protect what mattered. I've built my entire life on control, I admitted. Schedules, strategy, predictability. I know how to win. I don't know how to surrender. His eyes softened slightly. Loving someone isn't surrendering. It feels like it. To you, maybe. He paused. But to me, it feels like choosing. Choosing. The word echoed. Leo rolled onto his back and blinked up at us, groggy. Did I miss anything important? He mumbled. Daniel smiled. We're discussing architecture. Leo squinted at me. You're staying for Village Phase 3, right? The question was innocent, but it landed like a contract. I could lie, could say maybe, could protect myself. Instead, I heard myself say, yeah, I'm staying. Leo grinned sleepily. Good. He closed his eyes again, trusting. Just like that. Trust without paperwork, without guarantees. Daniel looked at me, not triumphant, not relieved, just searching. You don't have to decide everything today, he said softly. But I can't play with his heart, I replied. His jaw tightened slightly. No. We sat there, the three of us in fragile alignment, the tide creeping closer, the castle beginning to soften at the edges. Nothing permanent, nothing guaranteed, and yet it felt more real than any contract I'd ever signed. I turned to him. If I try this, I said carefully, I won't do it halfway. His expression shifted. Something deeper. You don't seem like a halfway person. I'm not. Then don't start now. The waves reached the outer wall of the castle. Water seeped into the moat. Leo would wake up soon and rebuild. That's what kids do. But I wasn't a child. If I stepped forward, I wouldn't just be building sandcastles. I'd be risking everything I'd ever built. And for the first time in my life, I was considering it. The tide destroyed the castle in less than 10 minutes. Leo woke up just in time to see the last tower collapse. For a second, his face fell. Then he shrugged. We'll build it again tomorrow, he said simply. Tomorrow. Such an easy word for a child. Such a terrifying one for me. Daniel looked at me then. Not at the ocean. Not at the ruins in the sand. At me. Tomorrow? He asked quietly. It wasn't about sand castles anymore. It was about whether I was brave enough to choose something that didn't revolve around me. I felt the weight of everything waiting back in the city. Board meetings, mergers, my carefully constructed empire. And then I felt Leo's small hand slip into mine. Unplanned, uncalculated. He didn't even look up. He just held it. Like he assumed I'd still be there. Something inside me broke open. Not weakness, not surrender. Clarity. I've spent my whole life being first, I said softly. Daniel stayed silent. I thought that was power. Leo squeezed my fingers absent-mindedly, staring at the waves. But maybe, I continued, my voice shaking slightly, maybe power is choosing where you stand. Daniel stepped closer, close enough that I could feel his presence without being touched. And where do you want to stand? He asked. I looked at him. Really looked at him. At the steadiness, at the quiet strength, at the man who didn't chase me, didn't need to impress me, just asked me to show up. I don't want to compete with your son, I said. You never were. I don't want to be first. His brow lifted slightly. I want to be chosen. Leo looked up at that, confused. You are, he said matter-of-factly. You're on the team. My throat tightened. Daniel's expression shifted. Something softer, deeper. That's not something I say lightly, he murmured. I know. The wind picked up around us, the beach stretching wide and open. No contracts, no guarantees. Just three people standing in the aftermath of something temporary, and a choice hanging in the air. I'm not leaving in 7 days, I said. Daniel's breath caught. I'm extending my trip. For how long? I don't know yet. That was the scariest part. No fixed timeline, no exit strategy, just presence. Leo grinned. Good, phase 3 is big. Daniel stepped closer, close enough that this time he did touch me, just his fingers brushing mine. Warm, steady. Are you enjoying the view? he asked quietly. This time, I didn't hesitate. Yes, I said. Every part of it. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to control the future, I was choosing it.